We're on our way to see Kenny Dobbs, one of the best dunkers in the world. I love your legacy. I love what you're about. I love that you speak. I love that you're taking your platform and using it wisely to motivate. Let's connect. Hit me back within 10-20 minutes. We exchanged numbers. I connected with him this morning and he said, yeah, come on by. I look forward to it. Now we're gonna go interview him and I'm gonna ask him what his biggest motivation was. I'm gonna ask him how he became one of the best dunkers in the world, what his workout routine is, what's his mindset. His biggest motivation is to going to jail, to dropping out of high school at 15, to coming back, to getting his diploma, and to going to college and getting a full ride scholarship. And now traveling and speaking to young kids. I love this message. I'm with international dunk champion and world-renowned motivational speaker Kenny Dobbs. What's up, my man?
How you doing?
Good, great vibes. I appreciate you taking this time right in your hometown.
Yeah.
I really want to get to the bottom of who you actually are and how you came to not only be a world champion, but you've used the platform to motivate younger people to live better. Yeah. That's rare. I see a lot of people with millions of people they inspire, and they don't really use their platform wisely. You know what I mean? So I like that. So a lot of people see your success, the dunks, the YouTube views, millions, but they don't really see the struggle.
Right.
Were you always successful? Could you always dunk, or did you have kind of a tougher past?
Well, definitely. I mean, nothing happens overnight for anybody. You know, anybody who you see successful, that came from a lot of hard work and dedication and being determined to overcome whatever obstacles they might be facing. So for me, myself, you know, I grew up here in West Phoenix area. So, I mean, this is my side of town now where I've moved up, but I mean back in the Maryville area it's not so nice as you see around here. So there was a lot of drugs, a lot of gangs and things, and my house was kind of that party house growing up. My dad sold drugs and was involved in that lifestyle, so every weekend it was a crazy party going on, and I got influenced at an early age from my dad's friends, my uncles, as well as cousins and family who were close to me. So I got involved with drugs and alcohol very early, and you know, by 11 years old, I was smoking marijuana. By 13, I was selling drugs. By 15,
and you didn't know any better.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't necessarily like knowing any better, but it's just I was influenced by the culture, the environment, the movies. You know what I mean? Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society, the hip hop culture. You know, I loved music. I loved, you know, listening to hip hop. Just though all of those things mixed into one, and then coming from the place where I came up and seeing my dad doing those kind of things, it was like, you know, that was just the way of life. It wasn't whether a decision like, well, I'm going to make a bad decision today. It was just, you know, I'm doing what was natural, you know, for me in my area. But at 15 is when I dropped out of high school, and you know, I was kicked out of my home at the same time, and that's when things really took the turn.
So when was the breakthrough where it's like maybe your back was against the wall, or you were like, I have to stop this, or I'm not going to end up where I want to end up? When was that turning point?
Well, I always tell everybody it kind of came into a few different parts. You know, my mom and dad split up. They began going through a divorce. My mom no longer wanted to live that lifestyle. People were breaking into our house. There was people, you know, holding guns at my dad, you know, drug deals that had gone wrong. And she split up from him. You know, they were on the brink of a divorce. Months were going by of me visiting my dad, my mom. I was mad at her. Didn't know what was going on. Why are you kicking my dad out? You know, that kind of thing. And on the brink of their divorce, my dad changed his life, you know, almost losing his son, his daughter, and his wife. He changed his life, stopped using drugs, all those. I seen him rise up as a man, but I had already been into that life, so I wasn't changing, you know, who I was. And then later on, my oldest cousin, who I looked up to the most, you know, he passed away at 19 years old. And before he passed away, he told me, I got to get my life right. You know, I got to be a leader for our family as well. And when he passed away, that was another big pull on me. But at 17 years old, I had moved from cocaine to methamphetamines and just, you know, robbing, stealing, breaking into people's houses. And I got hit, you know, 3 of my friends got caught. I got away, but they turned me in, you know. And in the street, you kind of come up with this code of you don't snitch, you don't rat on your homies and that kind of thing. So when that happened, and I was sitting in a jail cell and I asked the officer, how did I get caught? And he, you know, told me my friends had turned me in. That's what really broke that mold, that mentality of, you know, the streets got your back. And I realized how I had been hurting my family, you know, turned my back on the people who truly loved me and cared for me, who was always going to be there for me, like my family and God. So that was really the turning point for me.
Did you see it as a blessing in disguise? Where at first you're mad because they ratted on you, but then were you like, wow, this was a reason for me to be an inspiration.
Right.
Was it? When did that perspective flip?
Well, that it didn't happen at that point.
Of course
you know,
not.
I was angry.
You
I was
look
ready
back.
for revenge. At the same time, in that jail cell, I began going through like kind of like time traveling, you know, looking back to when I was a kid, when I had Jordan posters and, you know, all these kind of things all over my walls. And then now looking at my walls as a teenager, it was adorned with hip hop artists and marijuana leaves and all kinds of different things. So I had seen how the influence had shifted at that point, you know, and I realized like, man, I've allowed myself to lose track of my dream. You know, and I began to realize the people I let into my circle, the friends that are always hitting me up to go do, you know, bad things or whatever, negative influences. So at that point is when I realized like, man, you know, I lost control of my own life. I lost sight of my own goals and dreams, you know. And as a kid, you couldn't tell me that I wasn't going to become a professional athlete. I was out there playing every single sport, excelling. But, you know, I lost track of that. And while I was sitting in that jail cell, I began to evaluate my life and also analyze the time that I was wasting in my life. You know, here I am, 17 years old. The guy tells me, you know, you're 17 and a half years old. You've already been caught on possession charges. You've already had an assault charge. The judge is going to look at you and try you as an adult. So you're looking at 6 to 9 years in prison. So when he said that, that kind of left me with that cold, dark, you know, feeling in that cell room to think, man, if I go to prison, you know, people are going to be, you know, you as big as bad as you think you are on the street. You know, I had never lost a fight. I grew up with mixed martial arts and all that. They don't fight one-on-one. There's grown men in prison, you know. So I just felt like, man, if I go to prison for 6 to 9 years, I'm going to probably never get out because of fighting or whatever else happens. So that was my reality in that cell that night. And I just began to realize how much I was going to hurt my family, my sister, my grandparents. You know.
So you almost got outside yourself, and it wasn't about you.
Right.
That's
and that
interesting.
was the first time that had ever happened. You know, as kids, we're just so self-centered.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
What I mean? It's like, you know, you don't care what your parents say. You think you got the way. At the same time, it's kind of like, you know, they're in your world rather than vice versa. You know what I mean? So I realized just how much I was going to impact everybody, how much everybody was going to be so disappointed in myself. And deep inside my heart, even though I was doing all those things negatively, you know, drugs, girls, all that other partying stuff, I always in the back of my mind and my heart was that one day I was going to change that lifestyle.
But
you know,
not
one
right
day,
now.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, that one day, we always say, man, one day I'm going to stop. One day I'm going to do this. But that one day never comes, you know. And so I learned that people, you know, I always say it when I'm talking to kids, is people change their life out of two circumstances. Either desperation, you know, like my dad losing his family. You know what I mean? He was desperate to make a change. Me sitting in a jail cell looking at 6 to 9 years in prison. I was desperate to make a change, you know. So it's either out of desperation or it's inspiration. You talk to somebody, you see something, it impacts you, it shakes you up inside and makes you say, hey, if that person could do it, then I could do it too. You know, so you become inspired to make a change. So for me, it was the desperation. And when I began making those changes, I seen how it impacted people and inspired them in their own life.
So both for you.
And then it was like, hey, this feeling that I'm feeling of impacting my younger siblings or my cousins or other young kids out there in the street, that feeling of, man, you know, you really changed my life, bow, bow, you know, shaking me up, telling me, giving me hugs, like, man, what you said today really touched my heart, makes me want to get out of this gang life or makes me want to stop using drugs and all that. So I was inspiring people, and that's what built me up to this point. Well, okay, if I can inspire, you know, these people here, what if I could bring basketball back into it and inspire millions
that's your
around
dream.
the world? Right.
I love it.
That was my dream and my passion, and that's where this all came about.
It's interesting hitting on, I knew I was going to change, but later. I interview so many people, and I've dealt with thousands of millennials, and the number one thing I see that hold people back is they never tell themselves now matters. They're always like, well, next week, next month, 6 months from now. It's always like a someday mentality.
For sure.
So what do you tell those 17, 18, 19-year-olds that have that mentality right now, super talented, but they're like, well, later I'll get my stuff straight. What's the message?
Well, like I said, you know, it's an old saying, but nobody's promised tomorrow. You know what I mean? And so for me, I always tell those kids, look at me at where I'm at right now. You know, 30 years old and I've accomplished my dreams. But it took me 5 years to do that. What if I would have done this in your guys' place right then? You know, what if I would have made this decision at 15 years old? Now I'd only be 20 years old and be on the top of my game. You know, there's so many possibilities that could be, you know, and so I'm always telling them to take those dreams out of the back of their mind. Because if you just have a dream and it sits in your mind, then really it's just a wish. You're wishing that one day you're going to make something happen. But when you take that dream from the back of your mind, you put it down on paper. Now you create a goal. You know, I tell these kids, I created my own dream journal. I took my dream out, began to write it down, and then I had that dream, become a professional athlete. But I realized that, man, I can't do it right now. That's a 5-year goal.
Work in process,
so I had to break that thing into goals and saying, what steps am I going to take to accomplish that? And when I did that, now I had a plan of action. Now I knew my first goal, get your high school diploma. Next goal, go to college, get your scholarship. From that point on,
so where do you learn that stuff though? Because you obviously said you didn't have the perfect past. Where'd you learn to take the goals and put it on paper if no one was teaching you that?
Yeah.
Was it reading? Was it a movie you watched? Was it a mentor?
Yeah.
Where'd you get that?
Well, for me, honestly, like I said, the first time I had ever wrote down a goal was sitting in that jail cell. Oh. And as I was going back over all of these things for the first time in my life, you know, I kind of opened my mind and my heart to, is God real? You know, is there a God out there kind of thing? Because my whole life in school, you're taught, you know, you evolved from monkeys or some big bang in the atmosphere, and all of a sudden we exist. And I'm like thinking like, well, why are there still monkeys? Why isn't all monkeys evolved if that's the case? So it was a whole bunch of different, so it was a whole bunch of different things. But for the first time in my life in that jail cell, I opened my heart to God and I said, God, if you're out there, you know, this is my time where I need you. You know, I opened up my heart, began to cry out to God for the first time. You know, I said, if you can get me out of this situation, like everybody, they turn to God when they need something, right? But, you know, sincerely from my own heart, you know, I said, God, if you can get me out of this situation, I would change my life, you know. And as I was praying, things started coming up in my mind and my heart, things that I wouldn't normally think about. So that's why I felt like really God kind of pushing it on my heart to show me where I was going wrong, where all these things are at. And I began to write down for the first time, what am I going to do if I get out of this situation? Here's what I'm going to do, God. I'm going to change my life here. I'm going to stop doing this, this, and this. And then I'm going to start going back to school and all that other stuff. So that was the first time I had ever wrote down any goals on paper. And so I felt kind of God put that on my heart and showed me where I needed to change and at the same time what I needed to do. So when I got out of that situation,
you saw the power of it when you wrote it down. And it's something that happens mentally when you take what's in your head and you put it on paper and you look at it daily. Something happens.
For sure, definitely.
Something changes.
Not only on paper, like when I got out, I literally wrote down. High school diploma was after I wrote down my dreams to become a professional athlete and all that other training and doing all that stuff. The very first thing I realized I had to do was get back to high school and get my high school diploma. Right? I dropped out at 15 and I was kicked out every single year of school. So when I went back and I talked to the counselors and the principals and said, I want to get my high school diploma.
You were almost a new man at that point.
I was definitely in a different state of mind. And, you know, they said, well, you know, judging from past history, it's just like, it's impossible. You know what I mean? It's better just get your GED and drop out. But
hold on. So they didn't say, let's do it. You can do it. I'm proud of who you're becoming. They said,
no. It was basically like passing me an easy way out. Just get your GED and start working. But I had to let them know, it's like, look, my oldest cousin passed away. Now I'm the oldest of all the grandchildren in my family. If I just drop out and get my GED, what message am I sending to my younger siblings and cousins? You know, that when times get hard, just drop out. Kenny dropped out, you know, got his GED, so it's okay for me.
So you got passionate in front of him. What was their response?
Yeah. So then it kind of took them by surprise, you know what I mean? So now they realize like, okay, he's serious and he really wants it. It's not just gonna be that easy. So I said, I'm not getting a GED, I'm getting my diploma. What is it gonna take for me to accomplish this goal? And long story short, I ended up going to school from like 7:30 in the morning. I'd get out of regular school, I'd go to an after school encore program.
You were behind, weren't you?
I was way behind. I was a senior and I had 3 credits. Wow. So the only classes I ever passed was PE because we played basketball.
That's a shocker.
And an art class because I sat next to the prettiest girl in school, so I was on time for art every day.
That's awesome.
But other than that, you know, I didn't have any other credits. So and it was towards the end of my senior year. It was going to be impossible, you know. So I had to realize, like, you know what? It didn't matter. None of that stuff mattered to me. It was just I set my goal to get my diploma. Now, what's the task for me to do it? So, long story short. Went to school from 7:30 in the morning till about 6:30 at night. Took these big books home. After I read like 4 or 5 chapters, I could take a test online. And once I passed all those tests, and long story short, after 2 years with no spring breaks or summer vacations, I made up over 22 credits and I received my high school diploma.
Wow. That's amazing. That's respect right there. Even more than the dunks, that's where the turning the impossible to reality started for you, I think, too.
Yeah.
And to do that when most people say you can't do that, that's all. I mean, that had to give you confidence.
That was it. You know,
it's
once I
accomplished, I can take on anything now.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Once I accomplished that, that was the turning point for me. It's like, man, anything you set your mind and your heart to, you can achieve it. You know. So, at the same time, they gave me that high school diploma, and the principal shook my hand and, you know, told me, you proved me wrong. Like, it was kind of a thing for me too. It's like, that's a challenge in the same sense, you know. From now on, every single time somebody says I can't do something, I'm taking that as a personal challenge to prove that I can. And that showed up time and time again in my life. But when I took that diploma home and I gave it to my parents, that was the first time I had ever seen them cry in tears of joy instead of pain or sorrow. And my dad never really used to call me son. He'd always, you know, call me by my name, or hey boy, come over here, or whatever. So when he took it, you know, and he gave me a hug and told me, I'm proud of you, son, and they're crying, I started breaking down like a newborn baby boy, man. I was crying, but the passion that I felt of impacting somebody's life like that stuck with me, and I wanted to continue to make impacts in people's lives like that.
Let me know if you're similar to me in this point, where it's one thing to make yourself successful and get results and do big things and people are proud of you, but it's a whole new level of emotional excitement when you help someone else become successful, and they say, hey man, you changed my life. That's almost more exciting to me now than me being successful.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that why you're kind of started? So let's fast forward. So now you graduate. Now, I mean, it was tough to graduate for you. Now you're going to college. You got a full ride, or what happened with college?
Right. So I graduated, I get my high school diploma, and I had my daughter. Right out of high school, I had my daughter. So, you know, we get married, we're having our kid. So I didn't go to college right after that. I realized that here I am as a father. Now I need to support and provide for my family. So I began working. You know, I started going to work and working different jobs and that kind of thing. And I found myself in like 2005, 2006. Here I am as a mailman for the state of Arizona, pushing mail. At the same time, I'm volunteering after work, working for the substance abuse and gang prevention, kind of like behavioral health type stuff, volunteering and that kind of thing. Then I became the chair for that council. They created some brand new council. They asked me to be the chair for the Youth Advisory Council for Substance Abuse and Gang Prevention. I started doing that. I did that for 3 years, making impacts in young people's lives, like you said. You know, when you feel that you've impacted somebody's life, that empowers you so much. It's worth more than, you know, gold, basically. To me, it's more valuable than money. And I remember telling my wife, it's like, you know what, this is what I should be doing. I should be doing this. And I remember quitting my job and walked on and got a full scholarship at a junior college. And they were amazed. They were like, where did you come from? You know, like, where's your high school footage? You didn't have nothing, you know, you didn't play high school basketball, you know, so it was just raw, like, street ball talent and athleticism. But that was the first time
But you had the inner drive from all the challenges.
Yeah,
People
exactly.
don't see that. You have more than most athletes that had everything given to them.
Right. And so that was the first time I started working, you know, working out, training, lifting, and that kind of thing. So
at that point, were you, like, drugs, alcohol, were you kind of done with that?
I was all the way done.
So you had a pretty clean body now and you're ready to work out.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward. When was the aha moment for you when you're like, I could make this dunk thing something?
Yeah.
Was it in a game? Was it like you got outside yourself and you did a crazy dunk and people were like amazed, or you always knew you could dunk? Well, take me back to that moment, or maybe a couple moments.
Like even in high school playing street ball, like when I was a kid, I used to watch these dudes at the parks playing and dunking and all that, and we'd all try to dunk, you know? But in my freshman year, I got my first dunk going into freshman year. So that little rim rattle dunk like motivated me every single day to try to dunk more. But by my sophomore year, I'm jumping off 2 feet, I'm actually windmilling and all that. So I was happy and content doing simple dunks like that. But I entered dunk competitions like 3-on-3s, like Hoop It Up, Gus Macker, those kind of things. And I would win it, you know, but I won it one year, and Shaquille O'Neal's cousin actually seen me out there and said, yo, Shaq's having a national dunk contest in LA. We'd want you to come out. And I said, for sure, when is it? He says, tomorrow. So I was like, well, shoot, I'm in, you know? So they fly me out there to LA, and I go straight from the plane to the court on Venice Beach. Everybody's already dunking, warming up. I'm just barely getting my shoes and everything. And then, so I'm just barely getting my shoes and everything. I'm putting my shoes on. I'm watching these guys warm up and dunk, and this was my first time outside of, when you play against people you're not so nervous, you know what I mean? Like, okay, I could take this guy. But these were guys who were like 6'5", 6'8", 7 foot. One dude's nickname was 7 and some change because that's how tall he was, 7 foot tall
and he's
some
dunking.
Change. So they're dunking, shaking the rim, yelling, and I'm intimidated, so I never get off of the bench to even warm up, you know? Wow. I thought, man, these guys are about to destroy me. So luckily I didn't go first because I got to go 5th, and I seen these guys doing the same dunks they were doing in warm-up. That's when I started to feel like, well, maybe they're not as good as I thought they were. So my first dunk used to be every time, throw it off of the glass, jump, catch it, windmill it, with my braids flying in the air, slamming it home with my head above the rim. Everybody went crazy. And I went on to win that competition and, you know, had a big old check from Shaq, had a big old trophy. This fool dipped his big old size 32 in some bronze and put it on a trophy. So it was a really cool experience, but more important to me than the check and the trophy was the lesson that I learned, to never doubt that ability that God had given me, never doubt, you know, that plan and purpose. So that was my big aha moment, because at the same time, I was limiting myself. I always told myself, man, you know, between the legs, I can't do that dunk, so I never tried it. I always thought, oh, that's just Vince Carter and those guys in the NBA. You got to be crazy tall or athletic. And in that competition, I seen this 5'10" dude jump up and go between the legs and dunk it. After that, I was like, oh, if this fool could do it, I know I could do it. And within 2 days, boom, there I was, hitting between the legs dunk. So I learned another valuable lesson is never doubt myself and never limit my ability. So from that point on, I never told myself I can't, or I never told myself it's impossible.
For younger kids, don't wait for evidence. You
Right.
probably could have done under the legs before you saw him, and you just didn't think you could.
Right, exactly. In my mind, I shut myself down, and just the same as, you know, in school, I told myself, man, these kids are just smarter than me. That's why they're passing. They're smarter than me. I'm not as smart as them. So because I limited myself, I never applied myself after that point. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that was a big turning point for me at that point. Is like, man, if he could do it, I can do it. And then my video hit online after I was doing these videos and all that. It just went crazy. And then right after that, Sprite contacted me and said, hey, we're launching a national dunk competition. We want you to be part of it. And the rest kind of became history at that point.
So a lot of people have talents. They're singers, they're athletes, entertainers, whatever, and they know how talented they are, but they have nothing online or no one to discover them. So how you got discovered, you had something that you put online. You got discovered because of your talent.
Right.
So what people need to realize is if you're talented, get your stuff online, right? If you're a singer, get your stuff online.
Right.
People can find you, and then if you're good enough, you're gonna be seen.
Right.
So you were good enough, you worked on it, and you continued to master your craft, and that's how you got seen by Sprite.
I kind of put it like this: is like, you know, like they say, like success comes to somebody who's prepared when that opportunity knocks.
Exactly.
You know, so for me, if I hadn't have been training, working on that, then that opportunity actually knocked. I wouldn't have been prepared to have success at that time. So for me, it's like, you know, not only was I practicing on a daily basis. Yeah, I put my stuff online and all that other stuff, but at the same time,
you were hustling.
I was hustling to go to events where I normally wouldn't go to. You know, I was willing to travel to LA, go outside of my comfort zone.
You're
you know?
nervous.
Yeah, exactly. So those are the kind of things that
you don't need to be ready.
Exactly. Stay ready, so you don't have to get ready. You know, a lot of these kids these days, they just want something handed to them. You know, they want fast food and they want fast money. And that's why it's so easy to turn to drugs in the streets and all that other stuff. So you know, I think Mayweather said it best. It's like hard work and determination. You know what I mean? You know, you get in there and you work on a daily basis. You set a goal and you don't stop till you achieve it.
And you know what stood out with Michael Jordan too, because I've studied a lot of the greatness. I don't just study them, their footage. I study kind of what's in them, how they get to where they are. And he said, I prepared so hard before the game, I did not care what happened in the game because I prepared so hard. And if I missed a shot, I wasn't mad because I gave my all. A lot of people, they don't get the results they want and they're like, man, I could have worked harder. So he said, Kenny, we have a dunk competition tomorrow. You weren't like, oh shit, I got to prepare more. You're like, I'm ready. Even if you didn't feel ready, like confidence-wise, you were ready because your preparation. That's a lesson too right there. So let's fast forward. So you win that, you get the Sprite. Now, people can look at your videos and they can see you on this video and they'll show some of your dunks and stuff like that. And the natural reaction, people, is what you had. Oh, he's better than me. Oh, he had an easy pass. Oh, he has natural ability. His 48-inch verticals, that's just what he's born with. Is that true or not?
No, definitely not. Yeah, I didn't
So
have
you
a
were
48-inch vertical or none of that kind of stuff. As a kid, I was athletic and I was involved in every sport: baseball, basketball, soccer. So, you know, I was doing things back then that people call plyometrics now. You know, I just didn't know it. You know, we had a fence about 3 feet high. I would jump up, jump down, jump up, jump down, you know, jumping over, doing all these different things, which nowadays it's like, oh, that's a plyometric exercise. Well, I didn't know that as a kid. I was just imitating the things that I seen. You know, I just knew that every day I had to be doing something rather than nothing, you know, if I'm gonna get better. But I saw a Jerry Rice DVD, and Jerry Rice was my favorite player, you know.
He's a beast. I've met him, he's awesome.
Yeah, and 49ers was my team, and so I seen how he worked out, and just that little glimpse of him saying, this is, you know, this is where you get paid. You know, like, you see me on the football field, you know, making all these plays, but that's not what I'm paid. I'm paid to train all these other days so that way when I get in the game, it's easy for me to go.
It was something, it's funny you brought that up. It was something like 1% of his life was on the field. Like 1% of his time from when he started his career to the end, 1% of the time he was on the field. 99% was the food he ate, the workouts, the gym, which is crazy. People don't think about that. You can't just be on the court. See, I even talked to you before this on the phone, and you're like, you know, I'm sore, I'm walking like an Oprah because I've been working out so hard because I'm going to ESPN. But take us through like simplified like a workout. Is it like once a day? Is it a couple times, or is it a whole rigorous eating, working out morning, a couple different times? Is it what's the workout look like to a young athlete that wants to really get ahead of the game and doesn't maybe have the money for all these facilities and coaches? What do you tell that young athlete that wants to just be like you or wants to be an athlete?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is if they can understand it in their head that it's got to become your lifestyle, you know? You got to invest your time into where it's going to lead you to accomplish your goal. So I always tell these kids, like, think of your 24 hours in a day. We all have 24 hours in the same day, you know? So if a marble represents 1 hour, if you've got marbles because you're watching TV, marbles because you're playing video games, marbles because you're talking on the phone, all these other things, at the end of the day, you got all these marbles in your time of just wasted, and here's your cup of marbles where you invested into your goal and dream. It's empty. So for me, I had to begin to become accountable over my time and say, okay, you know what? You know, I'm not going to play video games as much as I love it. I'm not going to be hanging out with friends and TV and all that other stuff. I literally cut the video games and the TV off the same way I did with the drugs, alcohol, and the friends like that. And so as I did that, now I had all this time. So then I began to go into, okay, so now I need to work on my handles. Now I got to work on my shot. Now I got to work on my legs. Now I got to work on my athleticism, you know, the dunks, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, a lot of people don't even realize, like, I got drafted by the NBA D League. I got drafted with the Mavericks organization in 2012. You know, that came from hard work, not just working on dunking. I was working on my basketball skills, you know, all of that stuff at the same time. And like you mentioned, eating. I used to love fast food, big burgers, all that kind of stuff.
It's so quick.
But you know what? Yeah. But that had to become a training workout in itself, to train myself to not eat those kind of foods and train myself to eat things that were going to help energize my body and keep me fit, you know. And my kind of weight, you don't see me with like all kinds of crazy buffness, but at the same time, my body fat was almost, you know, a small percentage. At the same time, I was kind of like aerodynamic. You know, I look at these dudes like, dang, I wish I could be a buff dude like that, but my body had to stay aerodynamic so I could be in the air, moving and doing those kind. But at the same time, powerful and explosive. So that kind of training for me was combinations of like isometrics, plyometrics, pull workouts, as well as flexibility. I never was somebody who stretched and all that, but I got to spend some time with Adrian Peterson and some guys like Kodor Ziani, who's from a whole nother country. And seeing these guys like Adrian Peterson, that opened my eyes to like, man, I thought I worked out on a daily basis, but when I seen this full workout, it was like, dang. You know, 2-3 times a day doing your workouts, then at the same time getting your proteins and then stretching.
It's their lifestyle, it's their life, as you said.
So that's what had to change for me. And then the flexibility, I never realized, but just like a rubber band, you know, if it can only stretch this far, it's only gonna go so far when it explodes. But if you can stretch it, the further you can stretch it, the more speed, the more power and explosiveness it's gonna contain. So,
you know what's interesting is you say it's a lifestyle. I was talking to Kevin Eastman, who's the LA Clippers vice president, and I was asking him, I'm not gonna say the athlete's name, you've heard of him, but he's not in the NBA anymore. And I was asking him in a conversation, I said, Kevin, why do you think some of these athletes with all this talent in the world, they're a bust? Yeah. This guy was a top 3 draft pick. And I asked him, why are they not like in the NBA anymore? And you know what he said? He goes, it's not their life.
Yeah.
He goes, they don't love the game. And I never forgot that. I was like, interesting. It's so true. It's like they want to play basketball to make money, but it's not their all-out life, and it's not their lifestyle. They want to do other stuff too. And I don't think you could reach greatness if it's a hobby.
Yeah.
Do you think you could reach greatness if it's just a hobby?
No, definitely not. And a lot of these other dunkers is like, how did you... Because out of all these dunkers, they're all waiting for a phone call for somebody to say, hey, we have a contest. Hey, we have a show.
Then they work,
You know, then they go out and do it. Most of these dunkers, they say professional dunker, but really they got jobs at, you know, working at a fast food restaurant, or they got jobs, you know, as a you know, mailman or whatever, you know, the case may be.
It's not their life.
You know, so for me, they're like, how do you do that? And it's like, you know what? How I did it is I quit everything else I was doing. And I hustled and I grinded. For 8 months, I went without even getting paid. I was doing things based off of the love and the passion for what I had to do. And I impacted the people around me to off of word of mouth. People were like, he's genuine. We want to bring him out here, you know. So if it's just about the
separated
money,
you.
know, if it's just about the money, you're never going to be able to make it. You know, there are those flukes of people that is just like, I just want to make money. They come up with a great idea.
Yeah.
They have
That's one
some
in a
money,
million, though.
you know what I mean? They have money and they invest it, and then boom. But I didn't have money, you know. So you know, they say it takes money to make money, but at the same time, it takes that passion and that drive to be going after it on a daily basis to be able to become successful.
I love it, man. That's an awesome story. And the main reason I wanted to really get this out there is there's a lot of people that need to hear this so they don't have to wait till their back's against the wall,
right,
or till something happens to their family as well. Mm-hmm. So let's simplify and then we'll end this. The message that you have for the younger generation, it came from your struggles, from seeing how much you can impact somebody by just sharing a simple perspective or a life lesson. What's the message? If you were talking to like 100,000 young athletes or millennials or entrepreneurs that really want to be successful but they don't have the tools, what's the message for them from you or even if you're talking to your 18-year-old self?
Yeah.
Like you're talking to a younger you, what's that message that you want to leave? Kind of your legacy.
I can kind of like sum it up within like, you know, 3 key elements. And for me, number 1 is putting God first in your life. For me, that was the starting point that sparked this entire, what you see now of who I am. You know, putting God first, realizing that we have a creator, that we have a God that has created you with a plan, a purpose, and a destiny for your life. And when you kind of come into that glimpse where you're no longer just chasing your own dreams, but you kind of allow God to lead you through that, that was step 1 for me. And at that point, it became no longer about me. It came about me making an impact in other people's lives. You know, God, number 1 thing that God says in the Bible is talking about, you know, love your neighbor, you know what I mean? Love other people. And that's became real for me. Only person I could truly say I loved at that point was my own self. And at the same time, I truly didn't, because I was bringing things into my body that was killing me and harming me. So number 1, I put God first in my life and began to change the direction I was heading in. Number 2 is I took those goals and dreams out of my head and put them down on paper. I began to write down the goals, not just on paper, but like I said, even when I would wake up in the morning and I'd have to go through my doorway to get to the bathroom to use the restroom every morning. Above that, I wrote with a Sharpie, high school diploma. You know, boom, I knew what I was living for on a daily basis, you know. So taking those goals out of your mind and putting them down on paper. And then number 3 was I had to see myself as a leader, you know, not just only for my own self, but, you know, like my cousin said, I got family that's looking up to me. You know, there's people in the neighborhood that are looking up to me. And later on, I realized that I got a whole culture of people out there that are looking up to me. So number 3 was seeing myself as a leader. See myself as a leader for my home, for my school, and for my community, you know, and ultimately now, my entire generation.
Love it, man. Amazing stuff. One of the reasons I really feel like you're a different breed than most, I mean, not just dunkers, but people, is you're not just a world-class dunker, you're a world-class husband and father and person, which is why I want to meet with you, man. So I appreciate it.
Definitely,
much respect.
Bro. Yes, sir.
So where can they find you? I want to promote, you have some great stuff coming out. You have an app coming out. They're going to turn this around pretty quickly. Where can people find out more about you? Website, your social media?
Well, my website is www.kennydobbs.com, KENNYDOBBS.
We'll put it below too.
Yeah. .com. And then, you know, they can find me on social media, the Kenny Dobbs, THE, Kenny Dobbs.
In case there's any fake Kenny Dobbs.
Right. There is.
The one and only.
People, yeah. It's just weird how people try to do that, you know, hurry up and get that. But yeah, social media, the Kenny Dobbs. And then, like you mentioned, my mobile app. After getting drafted, I suffered a knee injury, tore my meniscus and my MCL. So while I was down is when the idea to create your own mobile app. So that way, when you impact the community and you leave, they can have something where they can keep up with you, where I can keep information and motivation on a weekly basis, give them new dunks, give them training.
That's needed.
Yeah, so it's kind of a way to connect with them on a daily basis.
Do you have the link yet, or you can send it to me, we'll put it below?
Yeah, they'll be able to check on their Apple iOS store or on their Android store here within the next week or 2 under Kenny Dobbs.
Appreciate it. Much respect. I'm excited to continue to get to know you, man.
Yeah.